just now. A few seconds. We can start now.
Can you send the YouTube link, please?
Sure. Once it comes up, I'll send it over.
Can you send the YouTube link, please?
Sure. And here we go. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Praja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Praja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajikacharya Stotra Shatashi might have His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Kodi Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Skaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to all the assembled devotees. All glories to all the assembled devotees. All glories to all the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Let's bring up the verse. So today we're reading from Granth Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 27, text 15. And hopefully it is easily visible. I'll make it a bit bigger. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Manyamanas tadatmanam. Manyamanas tadatmanam. Anashto nashtavan misha. Anasto nastavan misha. Nashte hankarane drasta. Nashte hankarane drashta. Nashta vita ivaturaha. Nashta vita ivaturaha. Manyamanas tadatmanam. Anashto nashtavan misha. Naste hankarane drasta. Nasta vita ivaturaha. All right, so word by word. Okay, that didn't work. Just a second. There we go, makes it a bit bigger. All right. Manyamanaha, thinking. Tada, then. Tada, Atmanam, himself. Anashtaha, although not lost. Nashtavat, as lost. Misha, falsely. Nashte ahankarane, because of the disappearance of the ego. Drashta, the seer. Nashtavitaha, one who has lost his fortune. Eva, like. Aturaha, distressed. Translation. The living entity can vividly feel his existence as the seer, but because of the disappearance of the ego during the state of deep sleep, he falsely takes himself to be lost, like a man who has lost his fortune and feels distressed, thinking himself to be lost. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Only in ignorance does the living entity think that he is lost. If by attainment of knowledge he comes to the real position of his eternal existence, he knows that he is not lost. An appropriate example is mentioned herein. Nashtavita ivaturaha. A person who has lost a great sum of money may think that he is lost, but actually he is not lost. Only his money is lost. But due to his absorption in the money or identification with the money, he thinks that he is lost. Similarly, when we falsely identify with matter as our field of activities, we think that we are lost, although actually we are not. As soon as one is awakened to the pure knowledge of understanding that he is an eternal servitor of the Lord, his own real position is revived. A living entity can never be lost. When one forgets his identity in deep sleep, he becomes absorbed in dreams, and he may think himself a different person, or may think himself lost. But actually his identity is intact. This concept of being lost is due to false ego, and it continues as long as one is not awakened to the sense of his existence. as an eternal servant of the Lord. The Mayavadi philosopher's concept of becoming one with the Supreme Lord is another symptom of being lost in false ego. One may falsely claim that he is the Supreme Lord, but actually he is not. This is the last snare of Maya's influence upon the living entity. To think oneself equal with the Supreme Lord, or to think oneself to be the Supreme Lord himself, is also due to false ego. Translation again. The living entity can vividly feel his existence as the seer, but because of the disappearance of the ego during the state of deep sleep, he falsely takes himself to be lost, like a man who has lost his fortune and feels distressed, thinking himself to be lost. Okay. Om Jnana-timirandhasa Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur-amritam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but by the mercy of my spiritual master, I have received transcendental knowledge, and it is by the torchlight of knowledge that the spiritual master has done this. Excuse the loose translation. We are begging for the mercy of our spiritual master, because without the mercy of meeting a devotee of Krishna, we have no chance to understand spiritual subjects. And so I'm expressing my gratitude in my imperfect way. Hare Krishna. So this is another verse talking about sleeping and dreaming. The last time I gave class, it was on the same topic. And I would like to reconfirm some of the points that I made in the previous class, that Prabhupada used this example of a dream as explaining how we are always with Krishna and never separated from him. Because of the question that arises, how is it that we could possibly fall from Krishna's pastimes? And the idea that there's a possibility of falling from Krishna's pastimes is not palatable to many devotees. And therefore they try to explain how we came from somewhere else. But Prabhupada never accepted that. Although there are obviously statements where he mentions in the Srimad Bhagavatam purport relating to the fall of Jai and Vijay. Prabhupada says that that this case of Jai and Vijay is an exceptional case where it's by the desire of the Lord, but otherwise no one falls from Vaikuntha. And so this one verse is used as the proof text for the idea that no one falls from Vaikuntha, and therefore we must have fallen from somewhere else. So when asked directly about this question, Srila Prabhupada used this dream example. Now, some devotees may say, oh, no, I've heard some devotees say, oh no, this dream idea, this is not proper Vaishnava philosophy, because this is Buddhism and impersonalism, to say the world is false. But no, it's not about that the world is false. It is a temporary, illusionary condition. And we have the evidence here that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, it's directly being described as a dream. Now, in this case, it's mentioning that a person in a dream may feel that he's lost, but he's not lost. He's just imagining this. He's experiencing a hallucination. You know, just like there's so many movies that are based on this kind of concept. You know, like there's The Matrix, where the person is just sitting in a kind of a test tube or something, but mentally participating in so many activities. It's like the world is apparently real, but actually it's all a virtual reality, we can say. Yeah, and there's so many movies of this nature where people enter into dreams And in those dreams, different things happen. And then they wake up and they realize, oh, it was just a dream. This is a very common plot line. A dream or some sort of altered state or virtual reality. And we have that experience these days as well, where there is this concept of virtual reality. Now, previously, someone could read a book, they could watch a drama, they could listen to a story, watch a movie, and so on. And by really associating ourselves with the main character in particular, we experience the same emotions as the main character. We're watching the movie where the main character of the movie is being bullied. He's being kicked, and we're like, oh, we feel it every time that bully, twists the guy's ear. We like, oh, we can feel it ourselves. So this is our experience in this material world as well. It's a place of vicarious enjoyment where our real nature is not of this world, but because we have so much identification, this ahankara, then we're actually experiencing it, experiencing these feelings. So in this translation, it starts by saying that the living entity can vividly feel his existence as the seer. So this is natural, that if someone is spiritual, that means consciousness. So we can all recognize that we have this ability to experience different senses, that we have consciousness. And the trouble is that we have associated our feelings with this material world rather than with our original senses, which are in relationship to serving Krishna. So it goes on to say that, so the living entity can vividly feel his existence as a seer, but because of the experience of the ego during the state of deep sleep, he falsely takes himself to be lost. So this is a little hard to understand how it's going on, because in this state of deep sleep, we're not experiencing anything. So this is, I find this a little hard to understand. However, the verse continues to say, like a man who has lost his fortune and feels distressed, thinking himself to be lost. So this gives us the understanding of what this verse is trying to say, that because we are identifying with this world, then we feel that this world is all that there is. And as a spirit soul, our real wealth is spiritual. So when we are associating with something separate from our real wealth, we feel we've lost it. We feel that eternity, knowledge, and bliss is not there. We want to live eternally, but we're not able to. So we have this eternal existence, but we're living in a temporary world, and therefore we feel afraid that it could end at any time. We feel that we've lost our eternity. We want that eternity because it's our nature, and we are eternal. But because of our existence in this world, we become fearful that it could end at any time. We also have the ananda, sat is eternality, ananda, blissfulness. We're naturally searching for happiness. Anandamaya bhya sat. We all want happiness because that is the nature of the soul. That is our natural condition. But in this world, there's no permanent happiness, just a glimmer of relief. And then knowledge. We're always in fear in this world. And fear is because of ignorance. We don't know what could happen. And this is where fearfulness comes. So our natural condition is to have knowledge, but when it's gone, it's very fearful. Just like if someone has had an accident and they lose their memory, it's a very frightening condition. Who am I? Where am I? What's going on? What's the story? It's quite it's disorientating, and it's quite a frightening situation. I haven't been in it myself, but I can imagine that it would be a very scary thing to happen. Although, of course, I have been in that situation, because in this world, that's the problem. We've lost connection with our real, eternal nature. So this is a point, again, coming back to what I was speaking about earlier, that we have an eternal relationship with Krishna. And eternal means eternal. It doesn't mean that at some point we're created. That's not how eternal works. So whenever there's an attempt to find an alternative to the idea that we were with Krishna in his pastimes and then we came to this world, it always comes, it always brings in the idea that at some point we were created, that we have a beginning. But we know directly from Bhagavad Gita that that is not the correct understanding. It says that never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings. So there's no question of creation, that somehow the spirit soul was created within this material world, and then we have to earn our way back to Godhead, by looking at the word anadi. We've been in this world anadi, without beginning. But we have to understand that many times these words that are used in Sanskrit, they're used in context. So anadi means that our existence in this material world, well, let's quote what Bhaktivinoda Thakur directly said. He said, our entrance to this material world began before material time, before Mayak time. And therefore, we can't say when it began, and therefore it's anadi. The consciousness shift of turning from Krishna is the point that we entered this material world, but you can't give it a particular chronological date. And then we enter this world in whatever way, whatever mechanism that happens, which is not that important. The important thing to know is that we have an eternal relationship with Krishna, and it's about a reawakening that connection with Krishna. There's no question that Krishna created beings in the material world, because that wouldn't be fair. Why would Krishna create some living beings in the material world and some in the spiritual world? No, it's very clear that Krishna has given us a choice to serve him or not. And when we choose to serve him, we may remain in the spiritual world. And if we turn and make the wrong choice and enter this world, we have the opportunity to turn our consciousness back to Krishna and then reconnect with our original condition. So this idea of misidentification is really what happens. We somehow or other get the idea of being independent of Krishna, and then Krishna arranges, okay, give it a go. And from that point onwards, we have this conception that we are independent of Krishna. The previous verse that we were looking at, it was talking about the idea of proprietorship. We want to feel like we are the owner. So this is the inverse of the peace formula from Bhagavad Gita, which is verse 529. So we think we're the proprietor, when actually Krishna is the proprietor. We think that we're the enjoyer, which is, again, Krishna's position. And we think that we are the philanthropist, that we can help others, which again is Krishna's position. So when we have these three ideas, then that is our false ego, essentially. And there may be more emphasis on one or more of these three things at different times. But this is how we try to take Krishna's position in this world. So, so this is false ego. And in this verse, it's talking about being lost and what it's like to lose a fortune. So when it comes to material enjoyment, whatever fortune we have will be lost. And I'm using fortune in a very broad sense here. I really like the example of surfing, which is often, which I heard, I think it was from Advaita singer back in the day. And I think it's a really good example about the nature of material enjoyment and how it's very temporary. So let's imagine we're surfing. Hopefully everyone, if they haven't had the experience of going out in the big waves, they can imagine what it would be like. So a couple of years ago, we went down to Gisborne. My mother has a place down there, and it's at a beach called Wainui Beach. It's a famous surf beach where there's massive waves, right? So I can speak from my personal experience about what this is like. So I thought, all right, here we are. We're at the beach. There's nothing much to do. Let's get a bit of exercise. Let's go surfing. And, we can enjoy surfing the waves. So the first thing is we enter the water with our surfboard. Okay, now this is the first challenge, is that there's all these waves. When I say waves, I mean all the whitewash, all the, broken water. And the waves that you surf on are on the far side of those waves. So we've got to paddle against the waves, through the waves, under the waves, around the waves, whatever, to get there. And then the reality is it goes like this. You get in the water and immediately get swept out by the waves, because the waves come in and they go out. So initially you get sucked into the water and you think, all right, I'm on the way. And then a wave comes from the other way and smashes you and you fall off the surfboard and you're like, oh. And you get washed back up on the beach and you're like, oh boy. So anyway, you start paddling. Okay, you get sucked out a little bit. Big wave comes, you paddle, you duck under the wave. Oh, you managed to get through, but the wave still carried you a bit closer to the beach, but you keep paddling against the current, working really hard to get there, watching all the pro surfers just like, paddling as if, they've got a tailwind behind them or something. And they're out there and they're enjoying the waves. So isn't this like material enjoyment? We see other people out there. Oh, look at those people. They're really enjoying, they're over there where I want to be. They've got the nice house. They've got the nice car and so much money. They've got the hot babe for the wife. Oh, look at their kids. They behave so nicely. Sort of this enviousness and this jealousy by looking at others. And yet we feel, oh, I'm struggling so much. Everything's so hard. And one point to bring up here, of course, is that appearances may not be exactly what they seem. Especially these days, especially these days, we have this thing called Instagram and Facebook. And basically the system with these platforms is you put your best face forward. So if you go for a holiday to some exotic location, you take photos, always choose the best angle so you're looking really good. Maybe touch up the photo with a bit of Photoshop, or, on the phone it has that beauty setting. You can set it from 0 to 10, how much you want it to remove your zits and pimples and things like that. So this is what we have today, that people are always showing, the best side of their life. And so by looking at things like Instagram and Facebook, we can get a really false conception of material life, that, oh, this is so much enjoyment. Look at everybody else. They're having such a great time. It's wonderful. They're enjoying like anything. But we're not seeing the things that they're not posting. We're not seeing their mental anxiety that they're facing because of their feeling bad about being overweight, or paranoid that they're going to, they're skinny now, but they could gain weight at any time. We're not seeing the relationship problems that they're having, which they're not showing on these platforms. We're not seeing the anxieties that they're facing, because even if they have money, they're worried that they're going to lose their money. We're not seeing the addictions that they have behind closed doors that no one knows about. So anyway, in this way, we can become jealous of people and look at the material enjoyment that people have, but we may not know the real story. And especially as devotees, we don't realize the value of Krishna consciousness, just in terms of the peace of mind and the lifestyle and mental, I can call it mental training, that allows us to keep an equilibrium when many other people are really disturbed. I'll just go off on another tangent. I'll come back to the surfing, don't worry. So just to give an example, there's one great devotee called Chitralekha. Maybe she has a new name now, I'm not sure. She's the son of Chaitanya Nitai from France. And at the age of about 13, she dived into a waterhole over by Hare Krishna's school, between the school and the golf course, there's a pond, which was basically dug out of the clay there. And the kids used to swim there. It was far out, it was filled up with water, a natural swimming hole. So anyway, she dived in one day and she landed on her head, broke her neck. From that day onwards, she couldn't walk. She could hardly move her hands. So she's now, a wonderful artist, but she has to use her mouth to do the drawing. So when this happened to her, when she had this accident, she went to the hospital, and there was another child who had a similar accident and had the same type of situation. I guess they have a special spinal injury ward. And this other girl was like screaming, "Why did this happen to me? This is not fair. I don't want to be like this." And she was completely distraught, completely going crazy, angry, cursing. Why? This is not fair. I don't want this. Is horrible. I'm suffering. Excuse me. But Chitralekha was a stark contrast to this girl. She was sitting there. Well, she was in the hospital bed, and she was thinking to herself, "This is Krishna's mercy on me. I was too frivolous. I was just being too playful and, trying to be the enjoyer, whereas I should be really devoting myself to Krishna's service. So now Krishna's taken away that ability to, be frivolous. So now let me become serious about my Krishna consciousness." And from that time on, she's continued her advancement in spiritual life. How's that for a kalpavriksha? I coughed and automatically the water came. Amazing. So this is an example of how, as devotees, we're really fortunate that we have the tools, we have the lifestyle, and we have the training that can allow us to deal with really difficult situations in this world. What to speak of the benefit of being able to purify our consciousness and go back to Krishna. So the tools and the consciousness. So lost the train of thought. I'm sure there was one other thing I wanted to mention about that. Anyhow, so as devotees, we're the lifestyle. Yes, we have the lifestyle, which, we're eating healthy food, being vegetarian. There's so much evidence that a diet without meat is so much healthier. We're not taking intoxication. We're having a regulated life. All of these things, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, it illuminates the holes in the body. It makes our body very clean, our mind very clean, and it allows us to come to the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness is where we can have that peace and that happiness. All right, so let's getting back to the surfing. I was just mentioning how when I was struggling through the waves, getting kicked back and dunked and thrown off my board, and I was looking out there and seeing, oh, look at those guys. They're really enjoying, they're out there. They got there so easily, and now they're able to ride the waves. Of course, another point that we can understand is the reason why those surfers are able to get out easier than I was able to is because they have practice and training. So a lot of times we might be jealous of someone's position without thinking that actually they got there by their work, every day going out surfing. In the beginning, they probably struggled like me to get through the waves, but by practice, they became stronger physically. They learned the tactics and the strategies, how to time it to get through the different waves. So we need to also appreciate the value of wisdom. By looking at these surfers, we can get that idea that by practicing something, we can develop our skills and our knowledge. Also, when we hear from those that have come before that can train us, that can save us a lot of time as well. So perhaps if I had a surfing lesson with someone who knew the tricks, they could tell me, okay, now duck, okay, now paddle, okay, now rest. It could have saved me a lot of time. So anyway, I'm getting a bit distracted on this whole surfing analogy, but let's get back to the original point, the temporary nature of material enjoyment. So here I am. enjoying as a surfer. Well, I want to be a surfer. And I'm, paddling, struggling. And then finally, here comes the wave. Woo, this is what we've been waiting for the whole time. The wave comes along and I paddle and I miss it. Okay, no worries. Next one. Okay, here comes the next wave. I paddle. I caught it. I fell off the surfboard and I got washed back up on the beach. Oh, now I've got to paddle all the way back out again. So that thing that I thought was going to give me so much pleasure, catching that wave, didn't really give me any pleasure at all because I wasn't able to actually achieve it. I caught the wave but fell off the board straight away. So what's the fun in that? In fact, it's frustrating. It's like, I was almost there, but I just didn't get it. Anyway, I paddle back out. This is where the story becomes a little bit imaginary. This is the imaginary part where I actually catch the wave. Okay, so paddling along, catch the wave, get up on the surfboard, catch it, do a few cutbacks through the tunnel. Like I say, this is imaginary, but I want the analogy to be complete. The perfect wave. And then it ends. Then what? Have to paddle back out through the waves. Try it again. And if that was the perfect wave, that means that any wave that I take after that will never be as good as that wave. So again, this is the frustration of the material world. I probably left out one other example, when I caught a wave and it was pretty good, but not quite. And then I want to, get it better, that's the more realistic situation. Yeah, it was pretty good, but it could have been better. It wasn't perfect. But even if it is perfect, how frustrating that we can only enjoy that in our memory, because we can never, ever catch a wave as good as that again. So this is the nature of the material world, that whatever great things we can accomplish, it will always be lost. One of my favorite quotes, which I heard from a guy by the name of Steve Gurney. Now, Steve Gurney is a legend in New Zealand in endurance sports. He won the race called Coast to Coast many times. And he maybe won it 6 times. No one could beat him. And he was the man. No one could beat him, undefeatable. Great. So every year he'd come to this race and he'd win. And then after 5-6 years, he lost. And that was it. End of career, all over. And you can think about this like someone who won the gold medal at the Olympics. That's the pinnacle of their sport. So then what? So Steve Gurney, he had a quote when they were interviewing him later on after he had finished his career. And he said, "Today's newspaper headlines are tomorrow's fish and chip wrapper." So here in New Zealand, I'm not sure if they still do it, but when I was a kid, the way that you would get your chips and your fish and chips is that they would basically fry it all up, chuck it on some clean white paper, and then they'd wrap the rest of it up in newspaper to keep it warm, and then you take it home, this bundle of newspaper. So I thought it was a wonderful analogy that here we go. Oh, look, I'm on the cover of the newspaper. Steve Gurney wins the Coast to Coast. Fantastic. And then how's it being used? It's just being rolled up and being used as a fish and chip wrapper. Yeah. So, of course, many of these newspapers, that's all they're kind of good for. There was one, I remember the student newspaper, there was a letter to the editor, the student newspaper, I think it was called Kraken at Auckland University. And he said, "Your newspaper is fantastic, but I have a few suggestions how you could improve it. I have 2 suggestions. First of all, could you make the newspaper a little bit more absorbent? And 2, could you make it perforated?" So I won't explain that. I'll leave that with you if you want to decode that. In any case, the point is that a lot of these newspapers are just wasting trees. Things that are not glorifying Krishna are just a waste of time. So just to recap the surfing story before I move on, that in material life, we struggle so hard just to get a little bit of material enjoyment. Many times after so much endeavor, that enjoyment is not what it was cracked up to be. And even if we achieve the pinnacle of what we wanted, we still lament because we want it again, but it's gone. Now, in contrast, in the spiritual world, it's like every day is the perfect wave, so to speak. In Krishna consciousness, in the spiritual world, it's ever increasing. So we experience something and think, wow, that was the ultimate, that was the best. I've never had something so amazing as that before. And then the next time, it's even better, and even better. It's ever increasingly better. So this is one point. In the previous verse, it was mentioning that, in this material world, we should you make an income in a way which we don't over endeavor, basically, because it's not worth it for material things. But for Krishna, we're willing to work very hard. So just one other example, I spoke about Steve Gurney, and this is very relevant, I think, here, when it's talking about someone who feels that he's lost his fortune, thinks himself to be lost. And this is the ahankara. It's associating ourselves with something that is not us, but we're so we identify with it so much that if something happens to that, we feel bad. Just like if someone has a really fancy car and someone just bumps it and scratches it. Whoa, you better watch out. It's like you've personally insulted that person. It's like you've personally scratched their own body. And so, again, this car analogy is often given, that we are the driver of the car. We are not the car. But some people have so much association with their car that anything happens to their car, they take it personally. And of course, for us, if anything happens to our body, we certainly take it personally. So I was thinking a really interesting example. There was a mixed martial arts fighter. She was actually the most highly paid fighter of anyone in this league. I forget the name of it. Anyhow, I don't follow fighting sports that much, but it's the biggest league in MMA. And she was the one who earned the most out of the men and the women. Why? Because she was undefeated. And that was her consciousness. I am undefeated. And in her mind, that's her identity. So guess what happened? If you fight, one day you'll lose. So she did. So her name was Ronda Rousey. Don't know if I pronounced that right. And one day she was a bit off her game and she just got caught out by a surprise kick to the face, and she got dizzy and she got beaten by an Australian fighter. Okay, whatever. This is the nature of fighting, right? No, not for her, because she was Ronda Rousey, the undefeated fighter. That was her identity. So when she was defeated, she felt lost. Not that she lost the fight. She felt like her whole identity had been destroyed and she didn't know what to do. She was thinking of committing suicide. So this is a person who used to sleep in her car because she had no money, but she worked really hard. She became the Olympic champion at judo. She became the most famous, most successful, richest fighter in history, basically, or certainly at that period of time. And just by being beaten once, she wanted to commit suicide because her identity was so tied up with the idea of being undefeated. So I think this is just a really good example about a person who identifies so much with a false identity. a temporary identity. And when that identity is taken away, how it's so devastating for that person. In this example, it's talking about someone who's lost their fortune. And many times we hear about people who, they may have been very wealthy, but they lost all their money and then they commit suicide. It's a famous movie, Christmas movie called It's a Wonderful Life. And from memory, that's the basic plot, that this man has lost all his money and he is going to commit suicide. This is how the movie starts. So it's a very common situation. So what is the solution? The solution is that we need to identify ourselves in the correct way. We need to have the real ego as opposed to the false ego. And what is that real ego? That I am an eternal servant of Krishna. And now I may be living in a dream kind of a condition, but I'm doing whatever I can to reawaken, to wake up, to connect again with that relationship with Krishna. That is my identity, eternal servant of Krishna. Somehow or other, I've fallen into this ocean of material birth and death. Please pick me up and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. So this is Lord Chaitanya's prayer, that somehow or other, we've ended up in this world, but we realize that our true identity is Krishna Kinkara. I love this expression. We know Krishna. Kinkara comes from two Sanskrit words. Kim means what, and kara, to do. It's like in Gujarati, they say, ban karo, or bankara. Hindi it's karo, bankara, close the door, or close. So kara means to do, and kim means what? So this is a fantastic word that means servant, kinkara. A kinkara is a person who says, what can I do for you? How can I serve you? Kinkara, what shall I do? I just love that expression. I think it's a clever combination of words. So when we can identify ourselves as a, what can I do for you, Krishna? A servant of Krishna. This is an identity which cannot be taken away by anyone at any time. And therefore we have no fear of loss, because that wealth is with us eternally. It's with us now. It was with us before. It will be with us in future. It's just that we've forgotten about it in between. So with that thought, let's go ahead as Krishna Kinkara, servant of Krishna, asking Krishna, what can I do for you? And in this way, we'll be free from fear. We'll be able to have our real existence, and we'll be able to wake up and experience the bliss of the spiritual world. Hare Krishna. I'll just check if there's any questions on YouTube, which I don't expect. No. Thank you for your attention, and just check if there's any chat messages here. Nope. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.